Hi, everyone. Welcome to our program today, Transforming Leads to Revenue, the strategy behind bringing in leads and closing deals. My name is Jim Kaufman. I'm the Inbound Sales Director at Square 2 Marketing, and joining me today is Dave Gerhardt, our Chief Revenue Officer.
Good afternoon.
All right, after the welcome, so let's talk about what is behind today's program and what you should expect. This program was actually created by our clients. So what does that mean, Square 2 Marketing? Well, we are an inbound marketing agency. We've helped many of our clients get more leads than they've ever had before. But there was one thing missing. They were struggling to turn their leads into sales. You could say they could not close the loop. They would come to us and ask us, "You've done a great job with our inbound marketing, creating strategy, creating great content, amazing website, and the leads are coming in, but we can't close them." So we created Inbound Sales at Square 2 Marketing, which is to help our clients figure out why leads are not closing. The today's program is what we are teaching our clients to do after they get the lead. But in most cases, what you're going to hear today is that it's not always what you do after you get the lead, but more importantly is what do you have in place prior to get to the lead coming in? What systems and processes are in place? Quick example, I was on the phone recently with a client of ours, and same thing. Leads were coming in, it was great, but she just couldn't close them. After learning about their sales process, what we learned is that they didn't do anything different up front. They didn't ask any different questions. They didn't have a process, they didn't make any changes. Once we made those changes up front, what happened was the lead started to close. Okay, so that was a big change. You're going to learn a lot about that today. So to set the stage for the program, we're going to discuss first what inbound marketing is and how it's different from regular marketing. So you can see how easy it should be to take the lead all the way to the sale. So we've got a lot of information for everyone today, and we're excited to deliver our process. So before we start, we do have some ground rules. Of course, everyone is muted upon entry. If you have a question, use the chat feature. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the webinar. If you're interested in receiving a recording of this webinar, we're happy to send it to you. Just let us know, send us an email, and we'll send it out to you. If you're having any trouble at all with anything on the recording, please send us an email to Danielle, and her email is listed below. So let's look at our agenda for today. First we're going to talk about is, I have an inbound lead, now what do I do? And Dave's going to talk about shortly is, what is an inbound lead? What are the different types of inbound leads that are coming in? Top 8 reasons behind why inbound leads do not get closed. This is the guts of our program today. You're going to learn what to do and what not to do. Are you having the right conversations? Are you aligning your sales process to the buyer's journey? How successful companies close 80% of the time? Managing the sales pipeline, and how often should you review your sales process? So as you can see, we've got a full agenda, a lot of great information. I am really excited about today because this is my passion. I love selling, I love teaching and training, and more importantly is that I love helping our clients take that lead all the way to the sale. So let's get started. And Dave, tell us about inbound leads and what do you do?
Thank you, Jim. Let me first start by talking about what an inbound lead is, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we do with those leads. First, I want to differentiate the difference between an inbound lead and a traditional outbound lead. So when we talk about outbound, we're talking about leads generated through radio, TV, print, billboards, the little plane that pulls the banner across the beach, those types of things. Those are all very interruptive type of activities. And by that, what I mean is someone's going to listen to a TV show on their DVR, or watch a TV show. They don't watch the commercials on their DVR. They buzz right through them. Or people are on the do not call list so they don't get those interruptive phone calls. Or they have satellite radio so they don't have to listen to the commercials. You see, we figured out ways to get all these interruptions out of our way so we can only focus on just the pieces that we're interested in. An inbound lead, by contrast, would be a lead where we're driving someone into our website. So what we want to do with inbound leads is predominantly use content and put that content where our prospects are going for information, then use that content to bring them back to the website. So when we talk about how we're going to do that and what we're going to do, it could really be summed up in this simple phrase: keep calm, use a systematic process. Once we have a lead, we want to make sure we can work those leads through a specific process. And when I talk about a process, what I mean is a documented sales process so we know exactly what's going to happen every step of the way. And I want to give you an example of what a documented sales process looks like. This is the real-life Square 2 marketing documented sales process. And you can see that we've really taken everything into account here that's going to happen once a lead comes in. There's no guessing what's going to happen next because we have a plan. And this is really one of the key takeaways from this slide, is that you can't just wing it. You have to have a process in place so that when leads are coming in, you know what to do. And this is going to help us from a variety of different perspectives. If we're adding a new salesperson to our team, they're going to very easily be able to see what the process is on how we deal with our leads when they come in. If we're trying to scale our business and we want to grow, again, we're going to have a process in place that allows us to do that. If we're in multiple locations and we're starting a new office and we're hiring a sales team, we already have that sales process. We're just going to duplicate it using the process that we have here. So there's a lot of benefits to having this process. The other thing is that when you have something that's working, you want to continue to use it. And this sales process that we're looking at now for Square 2 marketing is something that's evolved over the years. Literally, it took us 12 years to get to the point where we have this process. And I'll talk a little bit more later on how we continue to tweak that process. So I want to take the next step and say, once you have the lead, there are a couple of things that we can do with it. And I'm going to use some Square 2 terms, and I just want to take a very high-level overview. First thing that we want to do is have a discovery conversation with our prospect. Really, we're just trying to figure out what their needs are and qualify them out. Once we've passed that hurdle, then we want to have a much deeper conversation, that diagnostic call. Again, we're just trying to gather information and determine what their pains are. And then the third step in our process is let's present to the prospect a plan, or design a plan and present it that says, we understand your pain and now we can provide the solution. And finally, the last component in that lead, once you have them, is that you have to have a tool to use so you can track those leads as they go through your system. That tool is a CRM tool. The tool that we use is through HubSpot, their CRM, but there are many tools out there. Salesforce is probably the most popular one. So with that, I want to turn it back to Jim, who's going to talk about how we have different inbound leads and why we contact some of them and others not so. Jim?
So to get moving today, you're going to hear some different terms. Terms like market ready and sales ready, awareness, decision stage, no risk and low risk, direct business offer. These are different terms that you're going to hear today, and we'll tell you what they mean. But I also want to explain to you is that if you haven't learned it yet, that sales is changing. Sales is changing drastically from the way it was years ago. Information is out there for the buyers to look at, for them to review before they even get to us. And that's why closing business today, trying to close business, is a lot different than it used to be. And I'm going to say it should be a lot easier because by the time they get to you, the buyer is ready. So what we're going to look at here is called our reality marketing funnel. Now, there's a funnel for everything. There's a pipeline funnel. There's a sales process closing funnel. So here's our marketing funnel. And as you can see, what is here is we have top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel. So let's start with the top of the funnel. Top of the funnel, we're just trying to fill the funnel up and just to get some opportunities, okay? Prospecting, we used to call it different ways. So, but with marketing, we're trying to find different ways to fill the top of the funnel up so things move down to the bottom of the funnel, where you see the bottom of the funnel, that's where the salesperson takes over. So if you're wondering, hey, how do I fill the top of the funnel up? I need more opportunities. What do I do? Cold calling, all those things are not working anymore. Well, here's some things, and what it is, it's about educating the prospect. So here's some opportunities that you can use on your own is, remember the prospect, they want to be educated now. So free reports, downloads you can send to them, white papers, quizzes, different strategies, a lot of things you can offer to them for marketing. So by the time they get down to the bottom of the funnel, ready to speak to you, it's much better as a salesperson. And the nice thing is you'll be more prepared to speak to them because there's tools out there like a HubSpot, which is a marketing platform that you can actually see what the prospect has downloaded, what they've read, and as a salesperson, you can also sound more educated about them. So if we look down here, now we're looking in the middle of the funnel. We call our low-risk offers, just more things to offer them to get them more educated and get them ready to want to speak to you. So the different types of inbound leads and why you should contact some and not others, okay? So anyone who fills out a form to download offers, white papers, all leads are not the same, okay? We're going to talk about today market ready and sales ready. Dave will dive into that a little bit, but understanding what a market ready lead is, not ready to speak to you, and a sales ready lead. Sales ready is I'm ready to talk to you and look to make a decision, okay? Top of the funnel is about awareness, okay? They're looking for symptoms and naming problems. The middle of the funnel is consideration. Okay, now they're considering and they like what you have to offer. They've learned more about the industry and your product. Okay, now they're considering which vendors do I want to speak to? Who do I want to look at? Which 2 or 3 companies do I want to talk to? And if you did the right things up front from the marketing side and educated the prospect, okay, coming to you will be a no-brainer. That's what's great as a salesperson. Kind of like getting a really qualified referral. Who doesn't love those? And the bottom of the funnel, now they're at the decision stage. They're looking for validations to choose a vendor. So again, I mentioned in the beginning, okay, before we get into now I have the lead and close it, you might need to change some of the things that you're doing up front, okay? Changing the way you're marketing, changing your process and some different things. And that's why, our company and why we coach our clients and train them they're so successful because they've changed how they do things, okay? And so we go back to the funnel here, you see, here's how it all works. So as we dive into the 8 steps, okay, reasons why people are not closing sales, okay, look at it first up front. What kind of leads are coming in, how the leads come in, okay, and which ones are we following up on and which ones should we be following up on, okay? So, and then at the bottom, we'll turn into revenue. So we'll turn it back over to Dave, and Dave's going to really talk about, okay, so I have these leads in. Hey, Jim and Dave, why aren't these leads closing? Help us out.
Thanks, Jim. And as Jim said at the beginning of this webinar, this is really the meat of what we're trying to get to in this webinar. Let's figure out what these reasons are that we're not closing the leads, and then how can we close them. So I have ranked in order 8 going down to 1. So let's start with reason number 8 why we're not getting our leads closed. This is pretty straightforward. Our sales guide is just sticking to the script. They know their story and they're going to say it over and over and over again, and they don't adapt. What we have to do is make sure that we have our message in line with what the prospect's pains are. So a perfect example. I had a prospective client that I was working with. They were a software company. I said, give me your presentation exactly the way you would give it to a prospect. And what he did is just jumped right in, never asked any questions, didn't understand what my pains were. He didn't adapt that message to my needs. So you have to be flexible enough and do your due diligence on the front end so you know what your prospect's pains are so that when you're giving your talk and you're telling what your features and benefits are of your product or service, that you're specifically addressing the needs of that prospect. And when you do that, you're going to have a much greater chance of success because your message will resonate with them. Number 7, Jim alluded to this earlier. Are we dealing with market-ready or sales-ready leads? There are 2 different types. The market-ready lead is when someone comes to the website, downloads a white paper, an ebook, or a tip sheet or a checklist, that type of thing. They're just gathering information. They're not ready to talk to someone yet. They're just getting their facts together. They're still in the awareness stage. A sales-ready lead is when someone who has gone through that stage and now they're ready to talk to someone. Maybe they want a consultation or a demo. they've raised their hand and said, I'm ready to take the next step forward and get a little closer to your company. The way that we progress from a market-ready lead to a sales-ready lead is we have to nurture that prospect. And the way we do that is by continuously dripping on them with content that makes the case why our company is the obvious choice to work with. So by steadily having a nice flow of information, we can convert that market-ready lead into a sales-ready lead so they want to talk to you. Number 6, lack of preparation. I can't emphasize how important it is that you're prepared when you talk to a prospect. There are so many tools out there at your disposal that you can be using to make sure that you are prepared that it becomes quite easy to have all the information you need to show that your prospect that you've done your homework, you know what their pains are, and you're ready to provide the right solution. You also want to make sure you have the backstory. Some of the tools you can use to get that backstory would be things like site alerts and Google alerts and Google search, social media. You can use the CRM tool that you've had where you had past conversations with that prospect and make sure you're up to speed on where you left off. You could look at the PR section of their website and also review the blogs. These are all tools that we use at Square 2 Marketing to make sure that we're up to speed before we talk to our prospective clients. And this is really a good example of do as we say, do as we do. Because we never have a conversation with a prospective client without doing our homework first. And as a result, we garner a lot more respect from our prospects because they see we've gone the extra mile. And in most cases, the companies that we're competing against don't put in that extra work. So go the extra mile to put that effort in and show your prospect that you know what's happening in their space and that you can provide the right solution. Number 5, acting like a salesperson. This is really a big no-no. One of the things that we know today is that buyer behavior has changed, right? Buyers in general, they don't want to be sold. They want to be guided through a sales process. So I'll give you an example. If you're dealing with a company and you're faced with a salesperson, he comes right out with you with an aggressive approach and he's trying to talk to you about features and benefits off the bat. Well, what he hasn't realized is that as a buyer, we've done a lot of our homework before we even talk to that salesperson. More than 60% of the buying takes place before we actually speak face-to-face to a salesperson. Why? Because we have so many tools at our disposal now that we literally have the world at our fingertips. Through a little Google search, we can find out just about anything that we want to know. We can do our homework. We can understand what the options are out there. We know what pricing is. We know what the competitors are doing. So by the time we get to a salesperson, we don't want to be sold. We want to be guided through that sales process. So remember this little saying, people don't want to be asked and guided. People don't want to be asked and guided. They want to be guided. They don't want to be sold. And really that's one of the key things that we want to do. We want to make sure that we guide people and don't sell them. One of the ways you can do that is check out this book that we have from Square 2 Marketing called Fire Your Sales Team Today, available on Amazon. This really delves into how buyer behavior has changed and how we have to change as a sales organization to make sure our message is consistent with how buyers want to be treated. Number 4, no commitment to next steps. What we're talking about here is that you should never end a conversation without having a plan on what you're going to do next. You should always know what's going to come next in that sales process. When we think about the chart that we looked at earlier, that documented sales process, we know exactly what we want to take place. But the prospect doesn't know that. So we have to make sure that we end a conversation with the next step. For example, if you're talking to someone and you just had a presentation, you don't end the presentation by saying thank you for your time. You need to end the presentation with, now that you have a better understanding of what we're doing, let's set a time to follow up so you can discuss this with your team internally and talk about how we want to proceed. Let's schedule that next meeting right now. Don't go on until you have that commitment for the next step. This is really one of the key differences that will make in your sales process, because when sales aren't closing, a lot of times it's because there's no commitment to a next step. Prospects aren't qualified. How many times have you wasted your time chasing prospects who will never really buy from you? And the reason they won't buy from you is because they're never qualified to begin with. You can solve that problem in a couple of ways. One, I'd suggest you use a tactic called a pain power fit score. This is something that you can apply to each prospective client when you're talking to them. And what you want to ascertain is, what is their pain, what's their power to make a decision, and are they a good fit for your company? So I'll give you an example of how this works. Pain power fit is a pretty well-known process to evaluate prospects. And what you want to do is give each of these three entities a score between 1 and 5. If someone is the ultimate decision maker, then their power would be a 5. If they're simply someone who's trying to get information on potential companies to work with and they have no power, then they would be a 1. And ultimately what you want to do is determine what the pain power fit score is for your prospect. And for each of these, you want to add up the total. And the closer you are to 15, because it's 5 for each, the more likely they are to becoming a client. If someone has a score of a 15, they should close in the next 30 days. Again, this is one of the tools that we use at Square 2 Marketing. Everyone gets a pain power fit score. Another thing that's interesting when we talk about people who aren't qualified, you have to make sure that they are the right type of company to work with you. For example, if your company predominantly sells B2B and you have a prospect who comes in and they're in the B2C space, but you know that the likelihood of that person being able to benefit from your services is low because they're not in your sweet spot, well, why waste your time with that prospect? Consider this as a metaphor for how you should treat prospects. Think of yourself as a sales guide with a backpack, and every one of your prospects is like a rock. What you want to do is put those rocks in your backpack. Now, do you want to be walking around with a backpack full of rocks that are just going to weigh you down? Or do you only want to carry those rocks that are going to end up turning into clients? So get rid of the dead weight. That's really what I'm saying. And focus your time and attention on just those prospects who have the best chance of becoming clients. Number 2, this is really one of the things that separates a lot of companies, is that they're not remarkable or they are remarkable. And when I talk about remarkable, what I mean is that they can differentiate themselves in a way from their competition. If you're not remarkable and your offering isn't remarkable, then basically you're positioning yourself as a commodity. And people buy commodities based on price. You don't want someone to buy your product based on price. You want them to buy your product because you're a thought leader, because you understand your space, because you're a leader. And the way you do that is by positioning yourself as remarkable. And the best example of being remarkable is a story by Seth Godin called The Purple Cow. He actually has a book called The Purple Cow. So I want to take a couple minutes and explain to you how that story works. And think about your business, and by the time I'm done with this story, ask yourself the question, is my company the purple cow? So here's how that story goes. If we were to blow off today's webinar and take a ride in the country, pretty soon we'd see a brown cow, and another brown cow, and another brown cow. And before long, we wouldn't even notice the brown cows. Why? Because there's nothing remarkable about a brown cow. But if we turn the corner and see a purple cow, what do? We pull over, we get out, we walk to the fence, we're taking pictures and posting them on Facebook, we're calling friends and family, we're tweeting, we're putting things on Pinterest, on Instagram, we're sending texts, and before you know it, we have hundreds of people standing at that fence looking at that purple cow. Why? Because that purple cow is different, it's unique, it's special, it's remarkable. And just like that purple cow is getting attention because it's different, that's how you need to position your company and your offerings as remarkable. When you do that, that's when you're going to get that word-of-mouth buzz, that viral messaging, that people coming to your site, and the personal introductions. And that's what we're going for, because those activities don't cost a dime, and I know they're going to fit your budget. If you think about the definition of remarkable, it's something that's worthy of note or comment. Is your products and services, are they worthy of note or comment? Or are they just like everyone else's? One way you can tell if your products and services are remarkable is by doing this scratch-out drop-in test that we use at Square 2 Marketing. Here's how that works. You go to your competitor's website, scratch out their name, drop in your name, and ask yourself, does their message apply to them equally as it applies to you? Well, if it does, then you have big problems, because that means you're not remarkable. You're basically saying the same story as your competition, and that's not what you want to do. You want to be remarkable. In fact, one of your key takeaways from this webinar should be, what can I do to position my company, my products, my services as remarkable. And when you do that, you're going to find that not only are you going to get a lot more traffic, you're going to get a lot more people who want to do business with you. And finally, the number one reason that inbound leads don't get closed, pain. No one is going to purchase anything unless they have pain. And let me take that a step further. Unless their pain is acute, they're not going to make a purchase. Think about that in your own world. When's the last time you purchased something? And did you purchase it because it was something that you needed or something that you wanted? We're talking about a scenario here where we want to get to a situation where we want to address our prospects' pains and show them that we can provide the ideal solution. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. When we're talking about addressing pain, the key is you have to understand what that prospect's pain is, as I alluded to earlier, so you can make sure your offering rolls up to that pain. A lot of companies make the mistake of providing solutions that don't address pains. Not too long ago, we worked with a software company. We built their website, generating lots of leads for them, and they came back to us and said, check out this part we added onto the website where we allow our clients to see the trouble tickets that they've had over the last 5 years. Well, I said, well, are people using that? And they said, well, not really, but we thought it was kind of cool. The point is they created a solution where there was no pain. And that's something that you want to avoid. You want to make sure that you're providing solutions that answer to pain. Remember, no one will take any action until their pain becomes acute. For example, if you're a accounting firm and you're trying to prospect for new clients, it doesn't matter how many people you call. If they're happy with their existing accountant or accounting firm, they're not going to change firms. Maybe their accounting firm drops the ball and they don't file some paperwork on time and now you're hit with a tax penalty. Well, at that point, you're saying, I need to make a change. I got some pain here. My pain just became acute. It's only at that point that that prospect is willing to open and entertain the idea of seeking out a new accounting firm. So you have to make sure that your responses to the pain are going to provide the solution, but don't waste your time trying to sell someone who doesn't have any pain or the pain isn't acute. It's just not going to happen. The next thing I want to talk about is, are you having the right conversation with prospects? And actually, I'm going to let Jim take this one.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. All right, so before we go forward, let's take about a minute, okay? So if you're like most salespeople right now, you've got a lot going on, your head's spinning, a lot of information we just threw at you, and some of you are saying right now, yeah, I do some of those things, but that's not all those things. I'm not doing any of those things, or I'm doing those things, they're just not working. So my suggestion is right now is take a few seconds and jot down just a couple things, 2 or 3 things that Dave had mentioned. Hey, listen, of those 8 things, I want to start doing these 2 things more. Could be, I'm not finding enough pain, or I'm definitely not remarkable. It could be, yeah, I'm sticking to the script. So write down a couple things, because what's going to happen is after today's webinar, most likely you'll probably go back to what you've been doing before. If it's working, great. But I'm guessing you're on the webinar because you want to learn a few things. So take a few minutes, jot down a couple things that you've learned so far. And the end of the webinar, we'll talk about is when and will you start doing these behaviors, because some things have to change. If you don't realize that, sales is changing. If you're a sales manager or an owner on this webinar and you have a sales team, write down, how you want to start coaching your sales team, what you want to do that's different than you've done before. And if you haven't realized so far throughout this webinar, it's not about the back end, okay? It's not about, okay, I have a proposal in place, I'm ready to make a decision, now how do I get them closed? It's about doing the right things up front, having the right process up front, doing the right behaviors up front, changing things around. Studies have shown most people, after the first call or definitely the second call, sales call, they've made a decision on who they want to buy from. It just comes down to is, are you delivering the right information, the proposal, can they afford it? But they've already chosen who. Okay, so just remember that. So hopefully you've written a few things down and we're ready to move forward. So talked about the things you should start doing. Let's talk about now having that conversation with prospects. So are you having the right conversation with the prospect? The conversation varies depending on where the prospect is in their journey. Okay, so some of you are looking at it, so what is a journey? What does that mean, the buyer's journey? So your sales process, okay, needs to match up with the buyer's journey. First you have to know is, where are they? So this diagram right here shows that where buyers are before they make a decision. Where do they start? They start with at the awareness stage, okay? They just want to be aware of what's going on. Before we showed you the funnel and things to put in there. So on the buyer's side of it is they're looking at some ebooks, some white papers, some educational content. So they want to kind of understand is, your job is to, where are they in the journey? I was talking to a client recently, and what they shared with me is that the first time someone called up, they just tried to give them a demo. That was their process. And these days, they weren't closing them because they weren't ready for the demo. They just wanted to learn some information. Trust me, if you do the right things up front, they'll come back to you for that demo. So you're educating them first, making them aware of the industry, the changes. And what's going to happen is they'll see your expertise. Then we're moving them along to the consideration stage. Okay, or they're moving themselves along the consideration stage. They're now considering, okay, after they learned about the product in the industry, is what they want to buy. Now it might be some things you can offer to them, video, comparison white papers. They're looking at, qualification more, okay? And then at the end is the decision stage. Now they realize that I understand it, I know what I need now. Okay, I'm ready to make that decision to choose the vendor that I want to talk to. So as a salesperson, it's really important that you look at understanding the buyer's journey, where they are in the process. Okay, the days of just sending information, features and benefits, that's all changed. So now we understand the buyer's journey. Now we have to look at your sales process. Is it aligned to the buyer's journey? So are you aligning it? So we look at, in this slide you saw before, we looked at discovery. Talked about that, the first step of our process. It's about the prospect, not about you. So the first stage in your process is to, let's qualify them out, or have them qualify themselves out, okay? Then we're moving on to the diagnostic stage, which is now the pain questions, information gathering. If you don't have a list of questions prepared on this step, okay, I suggest that you create a list of questions. If you're not closing business and you're asking the same questions, guess what? Change the questions around. The call I had recently was with a software company and talked about they were giving a demo, and I said, what questions are you asking up front? And they shared with me the questions they're asking. What they do is they were asking questions and moving on. They weren't diving any deeper. Okay? They weren't trying to dive any deeper to, as Dave mentioned before, to really find true pain. Okay, so one is change your questions. Don't make them the same questions over and over again, okay? And then dive a little deeper to understand where they are in the process, okay, to find, the personal pain. Okay? Once you've found all that, then you can we call design step, your recommendation step, giving a demonstration and a proposal, okay? So now you're ready to present your plan, okay? And Tony, these days, it's much easier, okay, if you do different things up front, okay? As go back a few steps with the marketing, with inbound marketing especially, buyers have more information available to them. So the nice thing is that they can then use this information. And if you're not, as a salesperson, I'll tell you right now, if you're not looking at what they are reading about, what videos they're watching, which is available to you if you use a marketing platform tool, there's many out there, but if you're not using it as a salesperson, then, sorry, but you're missing out. So there's tools out there to use to gather this information, okay? And again, you saw this before. So why we're showing this again? Because now you understand why a process like this, why it took so long to put together, but step by step, it works, okay? Our process is aligned to the buyer's journey, okay? We understand the buyer's here, what kind of information we're to send to them, what kind of information we should be talking about with them, okay, if they're early on. Okay? If we even diagnose that they're not ready to move on, do we say, I'm not going to call you ever again? No. And guess what it is? You put them back into your marketing. Okay? They can keep getting information maybe until they are ready. But every step must go in here. Okay? And if your buyer's process is aligned to your journey, it makes the sales process much better. Okay? So, why successful companies close more than 80% of inbound leads and how you can too? Dave, tell us.
It's really quite simple. One word, process. You have to have a process. You need a process that's going to allow you to go from step A to step B, and it's a process that is repeatable and that everyone on the team understands. And it's a process that also is going to allow you to move the needle in such a way that you're going to be able to hit your goals. How are you going to do that? When you look at the chart that we were showing you for our sales process, it becomes quite clear that we really thought through what's going to be involved in that whole plan to take a prospect from step one to the end of the step where they become a client. And all along the way, we have different methods in there that are going to allow us to handle different circumstances. If, for example, we're talking to a prospect and they go underground, well, we have a process for that. We send them a close-the-loop email that says, let us know why you're no longer communicating with us, in effect, and we're happy to move on, but give us a little feedback. We also want to make sure that we have a process so that as things change in the marketplace, we're adapting. And I'll give you a really good example of how that works. At Square 2, one of the things I started hearing from our prospective clients is that we're talking to other inbound agencies, and we just want to get a feel from how you compare to the other agencies. And I'm sure this type of scenario could apply to your space, because how often have you heard we need to speak to some of your competitors before we make a decision? So when I started hearing from prospective clients that we need to talk to other agencies, we had our marketing team, our internal team, create a white paper called 9 Questions an Inbound Marketing Agency Might Not Want You to Ask. And what we did was every time we heard a prospective client say we're talking to other agencies, we sent them this white paper. And this served as a great do as we say, do as we do example, and as well as a way to differentiate ourselves from our competition. We added this to our process right at the beginning. And this is the type of thing that you need to be doing. What is it that you can add to your process so that every step of the way you know exactly what's going to happen and you have the right content to address those points that you know are going to come up. And you know those things are going to come up over and over again because historically what you found in your own process, even if it's not reduced to writing or a flow chart, that certain things happen over and over again. And when they do happen, are you prepared to address them? Do you have the right collateral to respond in an appropriate way that positions you as the obvious choice? If you have a process in place, you can do that. And that's really one of the key things that you need to do. Processes and systems make the difference between companies that are organized and get results and companies that just wing it. Just winging it doesn't fly anymore. That's not an acceptable response and not an appropriate way to run your sales effort. You have to have a process to do that. Jim?
All right, so as we start to wind down a little bit, let's recap some. And we learned about having process. We learned about the importance of doing the right things up front, asking questions, changing things around, being remarkable, trying different things, better steps of qualifying. So hopefully as we've gone along so far is you're taking some notes, you're writing some things down, but don't just write everything down, okay? Highlight, circle, star the ones that, hey, I have to do this. So I know as a salesperson, okay, we write a lot of things down, kind of like going to that seminar, okay? You get wowed, everything's awesome. You go to after 3 hours, you're feeling great, you learn so much, you go to the back of the room, and you bought the books and CDs, downloaded a few things, and guess what you're doing the next day or two? Same thing you're doing before. So my suggestion is when I always coach and train people is small steps, baby steps, okay? Look at what you have to do. Make a list, okay? Write out your process. See what has to be done, okay? And then move forward, okay, step by step. So now you have all these new things in place, and if you're a coach or an owner, figure out Maybe it's, how you're managing your team, okay? But also coach your team in the right places, train them the right way. Okay? So now we have all this information, we have leads in, and if you're like most people, you've got a lot going on in your pipeline. So now we have to manage that pipeline to turn that into revenue, which is why you're all here. So first, I would tell people is, and this is no order, but how many opportunities in your pipeline should be archived? Come on now. You've got a lot of opportunities in there at the end, and when I review pipelines of companies, so many times, and now where it's March, what's today, 26, okay, and so many times I look at the pipeline and says, close date January 31st, or as far back as even December, and I say, what's going on with this one? So, well, they're ready to buy, they're pushing things off, so you know what? Close the loop on it, move forward. Okay, if they come back, they come back, but get them off your pipeline. So send what we call a close the loop email. Try to push them one way or another, okay? And if they, most likely they're going to say, yes, I didn't want to go with you, I felt bad calling and letting you know. So it's okay, tell me no. So let's send a close the loop email and say, hey, if you're not ready to make a decision, it's time to move on. I'm fine with it. So clean up that pipeline. How often is your pipeline being reviewed? Okay, my recommendation is weekly. Okay, and also looking at the big picture, I would say at least 3 hours a month. Okay, it's really important that you constantly review your pipeline. Okay, and not just the last column of where it says ready to be closed or deals. You have to look at everything. Okay. And I think the next one is, does your pipeline mirror your sales process and follow the buyer's journey? If it doesn't, you have to rework your process. Okay? They should work hand in hand. Are you focusing on progress of your pipeline? Okay? Your pipeline should go in order of stages. We have our, discovery, diagnostic, design, okay? That's the way our process is and our sales pipeline is. And when we train and coach our salespeople, and when I train my clients over the years, one of the things is for sales managers out there and owners, also salespeople, is don't just focus on on the back end. So look at the front end, okay? If you do the right things up front, okay, the back end should be easier. So focus on progress, okay? Look ahead. So look at the ones that your sales calls you just had, and as an owner or sales manager, suggestions you want to give, your sales team will implement those things early on. By the time they get to the end and they're ready to close, they've already made the decision, and it's hard to kind of, coach them that way. So focus on the front end, okay? Are you qualifying at each stage? Always be qualifying, okay? At the front, the middle, and the end. That's really important. Stop those phone calls and say, hey, I'm calling to touch base. If you did the right thing and qualified at each stage, okay, those touching base calls shouldn't happen. And as Dave mentioned before, is then you're also having clear next steps on what should happen along the way. Okay, so look at the pipeline, review it, okay, and put the things in place you need to have. So let me look at, so how often do you review your sales process? Dave?
Thank you. And this is our last slide on how often we should review the sales process. The answer is regularly. Really what you want to do is make sure at least every quarter you're going back and looking at that sales process and see what changes can you make to improve your close rate. What things can you eliminate? What things can you add? Have you created any new content since the last time you reviewed your sales process? Have you tried any experiments with different tactics to see how they may work? Are some things working better now than they used to, or some things not working at all? If so, you got to adjust the sales process. This is not one of those one-and-done deals where you create that flow chart and now you're on your way. You constantly have to be massaging that so you can get the best result. And this kind of goes back to that how companies that are most successful are closing 80% of the deals, because they're not content just to sit on one sales process. They're constantly improving it. And that's one of my strong recommendations to you. Don't sit on your laurels. You got to make sure that you have a process that's constantly being better. And you can champion that effort to the point where you look at your sales close rate and figure out what your goal is and continuously tweak that sales process on an ongoing basis to the point where you're getting to where you want it to be. And on that note.
All right, so before we take your questions, we want to wrap things up on this end of it here and talk to you about some different offers and opportunities as we wind things down here. So if you liked what you heard today and it's helpful to you, one thing we want to offer to you is if you want to call us, send us an email, and we'll give you a free 30-minute marketing sales consultation. Again, we say free, no strings attached, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions and give you some marketing tips. It can be as simple as, hey, I want to learn more about what inbound marketing is. I can help you. So feel free to email Dave Gerhardt. You see his email there. We have a blog you can subscribe to. Okay, so here's a blog. Here's our website there you can go to and subscribe to our blog. A lot of great information on that, and it's helped many companies with their marketing. We have a magazine called 2Inbound. To get a subscription, feel free to go to www.2inbound.com and get a subscription to our marketing magazine. And the last thing we'll throw out there, so as I mentioned before, is for salespeople out there and you're doing a lot, or maybe you're by yourself, you have your own business, and you have no one holding you accountable and to do the things you learn to do. So I've done this for years, and I'm going to give you an accountability action step and help you out. So what we're going to do is that I want you to, if you haven't done it already, is write down 2 to 3 takeaways from today's program. Okay? Write down what you learned, what you're going to start to do, and when I will implement these steps in my process. When that's written down, shoot me an email. Okay? See my email address here. It's on our website. And just what you did. Okay? I'll confirm back to you. What I'm going to then do is I'm going to send you an email in a month. And I'm going to say, hey, how is that going? Okay? How is whatever you wrote down, how is finding more pain going? I'm going to document the sales process. How's that going? Okay? In a month, you can reply back and say, hey, Jim, I'm doing it. That's great. Or maybe you'll say, you know what, I didn't do it, but I'm glad you reminded me. Thanks so much. And that's what I'll do for you. Okay? So shoot me an email. I'd be happy to hold you accountable for whatever you need to do. So in the time remaining, let's look at questions. And I'm going to have, let's see what we have so far.
Click the green thing.
All right.
All right, so we have some questions coming in.
Hang on, we're reading them all.
All right, we have a lot of questions that we seem to have already answered about the pipeline and how often we should check into that. But we also have, what CRM do you recommend we use?
And that was Lauren Marino, Square T's marketing manager, the voice from beyond. So there are a lot of different CRMs out there, and it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish and how complicated your sales process is. Some of the CRMs are tied into marketing software automation. I mentioned earlier that we use the CRM that's part of the HubSpot tool. That works well for us. Salesforce works well for others. It really depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and how, as I said, complicated your sales process is. Anything you want to add to that, Jim, for the CRM?
No, bottom line is which one you should use is pick one, start using it. A lot of them have some great tools on it. Some of them have so many tools that you're never going to use. And I would say pick something that you're going to work with and you could also grow into. That's really important as your company grows. But it's important that you have something and use it, start using it. So, thanks.
And
next question.
Next question is, what's the typical close rate for a B2B opportunity? And the answer to that is, typically what we see is around 50%. That 50% of your opportunities should close. And if they're not closing at that rate, then you really need to take a closer look at your sales process and your qualification process to see what it is that's happening, because that sends up a flag that something isn't right. But let's figure about 50% in general.
Great. I have another question coming in from Mike, and he wants to know, should my entire sales team be using the same script and educational content to send to their prospects, or should they just do individually what they want?
Well, I think it's good to have a good process where everybody's kind of using the same script, okay, as the company and what they're doing. But I also think, I think each person, they can kind of make it their own. It's important that they customize it towards themselves, make it about also, everybody has their own style and how they ask questions. So that's really important. So definitely as a company, you want everybody on the same page. But my suggestion also is if someone is more of a direct person or the more analytical is, adapting to their style, because you don't want them to be uncomfortable when they're asking types of questions. You want to be around them, but the questions should be the same, because as you keep hiring new salespeople to keep coming aboard, you want to be able to give them those questions, everybody in the same place. Okay.
Next question has to do with should I put pricing on my website, and how do I better qualify the leads that are coming in? Well, let's talk about qualifying the leads first. If you have the right messaging on your website and the right content offers, that's going to serve as a filter to make sure that you're getting the right people. So let's say, for example, you're an AV company and you provide a solution that allows 43 companies to connect with each other with video. Well, if you're just looking for a simple video solution where you want to talk to another person, that clearly is not the company that you want to turn to. So if I go to that website and I see a messaging on their homepage with a headline that says, find out how to connect your 43 offices or your multiple offices in one easy step, well, then that makes it easy to understand that that company is not the solution I'm looking for. Another way you can do is by using the offers that you have on the website. We know that only about 1 to 3% of people who go to a website will actually convert. So if I had a piece of content on the website that said 7 mistakes to avoid when selecting an AV company for connecting my offices via video, well, now anyone who downloads that piece of content is a great prospect for you, and that serves as a filter of pushing away those people who aren't qualified. As far as the question related to pricing, that really is going to depend on the industry and some other factors. If you're in the space where you're providing customized solutions, you don't really want to provide pricing, because you need to find out what your prospects' pains are so that you can provide the ideal solution. And that ideal solution will really depend on what their pains are. So in that case, we can't say it's going to cost X because we don't know what the solution will be. So it really depends. Next question is from Leaf. The question was actually a clarification. The question was 50% of all inbound sales calls should close, or 50% of qualified leads should close. It should be that when someone gets to the bottom of your sales funnel and you get to the point where you've actually presented them your offer, gave them your proposal, you pitched them, whatever the case may be, they're at the bottom of the sales funnel, that's the 50% I'm talking about, not the top of the funnel. We can expect to lose people along the way. It's really the people at the bottom of the funnel that we need to close at a high rate, and that's where you should be looking at the 50%. Lauren, other questions?
I think we are all set with questions.
All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for attending. We appreciate you spending time with us this afternoon. We're going to have this webinar available on a recording on our website, and you'll be able to get it by email also. Just send us an email and we'll send that to you. And also, if you have any additional questions, you can send us an email. And here is our contact info. You can contact Jim or myself. We're happy to answer any additional questions that you have, as well as get the webinar recording to you. Thanks again for your time, and we look forward to you joining us on our next webinar.